Here we are at the Global Research Funding Forum. I'm delighted to be here for lots of reasons. Amongst other things, Kenneth asked about passports, or maybe it was Rick who asked about passports. I certainly have my passport, and these people at UNT made it so easy for those of us from Colorado or from Washington to get visas to come to Texas. We really appreciate that. I'm also happy to be here this morning because I'm a professor of political science. My work has always been in Europe. I'm a Europeanist. And I was happy this morning, as the bus did not find us, with some of my European colleagues, 2 from France right here and 1 from Greece as well. We hijacked a bus and we got here. So good job to the Europeans. There are other reasons why I'm happy to be here. One is for Kathy Olson and Rick Nader, who said, please come to the conference. There's no easier way to get someone to come as a speaker than for the moderators or the organizers who you like to invite you. It's tougher to say no to people like that as well. Secondly, I'm happy to be here. If I weren't here, I'm from Colorado, I'd probably be skiing in Colorado. And obviously, we'd all rather be in Denton, Texas than skiing in the mountains of Colorado. More seriously, I really welcome these kinds of broad discussions, and they don't take place nearly enough. Discussions where we get vice presidents for research, provost, senior international officers. Now, here's a word. Those of you who are not senior international officers, we never call ourselves that on our own campus. I have a feeling on our campuses sometimes we may be called SOBs rather than SIOs, but it's a term we only use when we're at this kind of a conference. Nonetheless, this discussion doesn't take place nearly enough. I think probably APLU, the Association for Public and Land-Grant Universities, is the one place that really does do this as well. And the whole point of this panel, we do have a long time to fill, as Kathy was saying. I think there won't be any trouble. As we talked on the telephone, as we talked last night, all of us here, I think there's going to be a very active debate, and I suspect all of you are going to push us really hard as well. I want to make one point about international student enrollment. Not the theme for this conference, but I think it's important to mention. And that is, I was looking at the Open Doors list that they just issued in November, and I think if you look at the top 51 schools, 5 of them are from Texas for international student enrollment. And I say 51, not 50, because the University of North Texas is number 51. But really a great accomplishment for the campuses, University of Texas, and then UNT as well. Over 31,000 international students on those campuses. So I did have one concern coming to this conference as well, but that got rectified pretty quickly. I agreed to speak here quite a few months ago without realizing this was Super Bowl weekend. And as the Denver Broncos seem to be doing quite well, or my other team, I lived in Boston for so many years, the Patriots or the Indianapolis Colts. I lived in Indianapolis. I even lived in Buffalo, but I don't think the Buffalo Bills came close to the Super Bowl. I was worried that I was going to be here in a motel when the Denver Broncos were in the Super Bowl. But when I watched the game last night, the Broncos weren't there. I didn't have to worry about that, nor did I see the Dallas Cowboys. Okay, in short, this session is really a unique opportunity for exchange. I want to be honest about what has happened with the field of internationalization. Since 2004, less than 10 years, there's been a stunning change, really a stunning change. And I think that Nostalgic said this best in 2004. Nostalgic was the National Association for state universities and land-grant colleges as well. That was the predecessor for APLU. In a report in 2004, A Call to Leadership, the presidential role in internationalizing the university, Nostalgic was really critical of university leadership, very critical of what presidents had done as well. They said, we're really missing the mark. Internationalization is not just one more factor to think about at your university. Internationalization has to be a central factor. And I love this last quote on the slide. The president cannot create a global university alone, but you can't create a global university without the president. So true. Now everyone is embracing internationalization. We've figured it out. We do it at all sorts of different levels. There still are pitfalls to avoid. And what I would say is research isn't nearly central enough. Not enough universities are thinking about the role of research as well. For me, research has always been the key. When I came to Colorado State University, I'd been the head of a research institute for 7.5 years before I came to Colorado State. Research has been the key. When we drafted a new internationalization plan in 2007 at my university, I made research the linchpin. I made research the anchor for what we were doing. And we got one of the Paul Simon Spotlight Awards, one of the national awards from NAFSA the next year for highlighting research. So NAFSA now continues to be very active in this. We have one of the vice presidents for NAFSA, Deb Pierce, right over here. There's a report that came out recently by John Hudsick and Joanne McCarthy, two super respected people in the field, good friends of many of us as well. If you look at this, it's about a 40-page report, and it's free, and it's on the website for NAFSA as well. They are talking about comprehensive internationalization. They set out several points. Let's see, they've got strategy at the macro level. They set out 10 different points. Research doesn't appear. So here you've got a couple of the leading voices in the United States, and they're still not emphasizing research. I know if we talk to John or Joanne, they know how important it is, but it's not in the report. And I would argue research is the comparative advantage that we have in the United States for higher education. My next slide is one, I love this slide. The numbers are outdated. It appeared in the Chronicle of Higher Education 2 years ago in the Almanac edition. My office, my wife, both worry a little bit about me. I get excited when the Chronicle issues the Almanac edition. I sit down and read it. People from UNT gave us literature last night, gave us more literature this morning. I actually read that literature and I enjoy looking at it. So this is a slide I like to use. These are figures from 2006, so the dollar figures would all be up. It's comparing various countries, how much they spend per student. For me, this is the argument why we have so many international students that want to come to the United States to study. And it's the research and development link that's so essential to this. You can see in the United States, it's probably 40% higher than virtually all the other countries. If you look at a country like Germany, a country that I know very well, they have an excellence initiative, a very wise initiative they launched, I would guess, 7 or 8 years ago. What they've tried to do is figure out how they can highlight 9 or 10 of the best universities in Germany. I heard last night Malaysia now is emulating the German model. We were in Saudi Arabia recently. Saudi Arabia has the King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology, like the NSF, supporting all kinds of research. They have something called the King Abdullah Institute for the large research. In Germany, I think the Excellence Initiative has been successful because universities have learned they need to go out. They need to work with institutes like the Max Planck Institute or the Helmholtz Institutes as well. So it's a new model that's out there. Well, you look at the U.S. universities, and we're incredibly strong across the board. There must be 150 universities in the United States that are really top-notch research universities. I know at Colorado State University, we spend over $350 million a year with research dollars. And one of the things we're proudest about, this is the kind of measure the rest of you don't have to worry about, we say Colorado State University is number 2 in the United States for faculty grants per faculty member if you don't have a medical school. Well, we work hard to get these numbers that we can use, but we're pretty proud of that number as well. Let me get to my 3 takeaway points. First, research should be the anchor for internationalization. Second, I want to offer 4 approaches for supporting international research. And third, something I don't think I'm going to talk about here as time runs out, but we certainly can discuss it later, what kinds of support can be utilized to facilitate the internationalization of research? A hint on this last point, money helps for some strange reason. In simple terms, I'm proposing the following 4 approaches. The cross your fingers approach, the slow trickle down approach, the inventorying our resources approach, and surprise, surprise, open your checkbook. The cross your fingers approach, these are really pretty simple. You probably all are following them already anyway. The cross your fingers approach basically says, let faculty be faculty. Let them do what they do well, and they do this very well as well. They're out there all the time establishing one-on-one connections with colleagues around the world. We don't have to worry about our faculty. They're going to do that anyway. But the second approach, the slow trickle approach, the trickle-down approach, I want to bring things up a notch. I want to bump everything up to a different level. This is where we're asking faculty to formalize the relationships that they're forming. This is how we fill our file cabinets in offices of international programs, because we have these IMOUs, and they can fill up so many file cabinets. Now, we all joke about that, but it does play a role. It is important to do as well. I will say at my university, the worst case that I ever heard of for an IMOU, fortunately happened before I was the Vice Provost for International Affairs, and that is one of our professors from civil engineering went to Taiwan. They asked him to inspect a bridge and assure them that it was safe. He did that through a memorandum of understanding, unbeknownst to the Vice President for Research, unbeknownst to the university president as well. Fortunately, that bridge did stand up, and those aren't the kinds of IMOUs that we sign anymore. Also, on our campus, we've reduced the number of IMOUs from 300 down to about 100 in 6 or 7 years. And the main way I did this, well, 2 ways. Number one, I said to faculty, do you really need this document? If you do, of course, we'll sign it with you. But number two, I asked them to consult with their department chairs and with their deans. That had an interesting effect. All of a sudden, many fewer requests. So why do we need this paper? The third approach is what I call the inventory approach. I'm being a little cagey. I could have used a different term. You'd understand it right away. This really is what offices of international programs can contribute to internationalization. That is, build strategic partnerships. In our case, at Colorado State, we have 15 at present around the world, and our goal is to have no more than 20. We're really trying to bring faculty together. I have what I call my rule of three. The rule of three is there ought to be at least 3 substantive areas of collaboration, and there ought to be at least 3 visits by our delegations there so that we know what we're talking about with this. Indeed, in the last 5 years, we found out we need much stricter, more nuanced rules for these kinds of partnerships as well, and we've been developing those. But I have one very clever approach that I'll share with you this morning. It's something new we developed this year. That is, if a strategic partner doesn't realize that they are our strategic partner, we don't call them a strategic partner anymore. We're looking for sunset provisions. How do we make sure that this really is an active partnership? What we do, obviously, is pull our faculty together. This might be in Vietnam. It could be in Saudi Arabia. I was there just 3 weeks ago with faculty from civil engineering as well. It's happening in Indonesia, in Peru, in Costa Rica. But here's a couple of examples. I discovered 3 years ago, I guess, that in the month of October, a wonderful time to visit China, we had 11 faculty delegations, not 11 faculty members, 11 faculty delegations in China that month, and none of them knew that the other delegations were there. We bring those groups together. My favorite example, we have 2 faculty members, Egyptians. I think they have U.S. passports now, but Egyptians by birth. They were at our campus for 18 years, and they never met each other. So I took them to lunch. Easy to do. And my final, I say approach. Notice I've avoided the word model here. I've been saying approach because that would be too formalized. The final approach that I would take is the open your checkbook approach. Eventually, you do need to put money on the table. And by the way, we don't just do it in research. With our international students, as we've encouraged students from our strategic partners around the world to come, as we have guaranteed scholarships for them, we're now giving $1.5 million in scholarships to 180 of these students from the strategic partners. Now, I'm able to say to the provost, yeah, I'm asking you to give $1.5 million, but you're getting over $3 million from these students in net profit. These are students who would not otherwise have come. So that really helps make the case there as well. Our big effort at Colorado State has been with a university in China, East China Normal University in Shanghai. Many of us know that campus. We've established a joint research institute there, and we put almost $150,000 of real money into that joint research institute every year. We think it's worth doing as well. It's headed by our vice president for research. On the Chinese side, it's headed by their vice president for research and also by one of their academicians as well. We have 6 specific faculty projects. We take our faculty there, they bring our faculty here. This sounds great. I know that one of the things we want to focus on the rest of the morning is, well, what are some of the things that don't work? I will say this has been hard because we keep getting to plateaus. The research slows down. How then do you move people forward? How do you push them to keep this research going as well? So it's a sense to keep the momentum. Now, I said my third takeaway point I'd want to talk about later, so we're right on time with that. I'll talk later about types of support. I just want to close with 2 conclusions. One is the importance of graduate students and of departments. Really essential. I say that research is the anchor of the internationalization strategy. It's the graduate students who make it happen. I don't know what the right analogy is to say they're the lubricant or whatever, so I avoided that. But it's the graduate students who really keep these collaborations going. And my second final observation is research, as I said at the start, research truly is the comparative advantage that we've got in the United States. It's not always cheap to do, but there really is a payoff. Thanks very much.